everyone, Kumar Data Train here, and we're trying something new. We've been interviewing lots of guests with very set topics. Today, we're going to try something different with my good friend, Glenn, who has been on the show before. We've had lots of episodes on topics that range from X-scale to permaculture to climate change to you name it. We've talked about it, even though I'm certainly not an expert. Glenn is probably more a nerd, and he gets into these things. I just like to talk to him because he's so knowledgeable about this stuff. So before I just ramble on, let me pull him on. And Glenn,
hey Kumar,
how you doing?
Good, thanks.
So I was thinking about this show and thinking about that movie, Forrest Gump, and the famous line in his movie is, "Life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get." And so for these fireside chats, which I'm intending to try, maybe do one of these every once in a while, is you just never know what you're going to get. It just depends on what our mood is and where the conversation leads us. And obviously there's a lot going on in the world. It's disruptive. People are, I'd say, no matter what side of the political fence you're on, it's making people sit up and take notice and engage in conversation, maybe not always in a good way. And so where do you want to start? What's on your mind, Glenn?
You sparked a thought when you said disruption. I have a kind of a long story about that, but there's two major disruptions that people don't talk that much about that are going on right now, that, with a caveat that I hope it happens fast enough. Mm-hmm. If it does, we're going to be in a beautiful place, and people will have a lot of abundance. I'll use the A word that some people are using. People will have a lot of abundance thanks to this. So there's a tickler and a tease.
It sounds wonderful. We need some positivity in the world right now.
Okay.
And as we're recording this show, the temperature outside on the East Coast is probably in the single digits now, maybe double digits. It's probably in the teens. It's very cold, coldest winter in a long time. Certainly climate is being affected. And, people might say, well, anyway, I'm not going to get into that. It's just, there's a lot going on, and any good news is probably welcome. So what do you have to share?
It's minus 15 up here, for the record. I'm in Toronto. That's centigrade, though.
Yeah, okay.
We're all cold.
It's probably minus 15 centigrade, minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. It's probably about -5 here then, something like that.
I'd like to start with a story, and it'll make sense why I'm saying that as I go on. I'm fascinated by the story of Horace Rackham, who was the chairman of the original Ford Motor Company in 1903. When Henry Ford formed the Ford Motor Company, this was after his 2 bankruptcies, by the way, so he was not viewed as a very good business risk. He asked all of the shareholders to put in $5,000. I looked that up once, going by memory, I think that's about $800,000 equivalent today, but don't quote me on that. Look it up. The point is, it was a lot of money, and Horace had to sell a bunch of properties, so it was kind of a big deal. And he went to his banker and asked him what he thought. And the banker said, and this is a famous quote, you can look it up: "Do not invest in Mr. Ford's company. The automobile is merely a novelty, a fad. The horse is here to stay." Of course, we laugh at that today. But in 1903, it actually almost made sense. In 1903, there weren't many cars. There were a few, but not that many. The first produced car was the Model T, and that hadn't happened yet in 1903. And mass production hadn't even been invented yet. All the cars were made by hand. So the banker is not as crazy sounding as you might think in 1903. Now, in 1912, when the production line was in full swing and everybody was buying Fords, And the more volume you made, the lower the price got, and they sold millions of them. It was out of the park home run. At that point, yeah, it was clear. Cars, the horse is gone, the car is here. But in 1903, it wasn't quite so clear.
Mm.
To put a bow around the story, in 1919, Henry Ford bought out Horace Rackham for $19 million.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part. You're a little muffled.
Henry Ford bought out Horace in 1919
Okay.
for $12 million.
Okay.
That's a tidy return on investment.
Sure. Yeah.
So I say that to lead into the topic of disruption. When something really radical, like switching from the horse to the car, or manual labor to manual calculators to computers, that's kind of a big deal, and it's hard to wrap your head around it.
Mm-hmm.
And people have trouble visualizing it, although there's always keeners and pioneers like Henry Ford who are ready to push the envelope. But like, is this going to be mainstream? Is this going to take off? It's hard to predict, and it's particularly hard to predict exponential growth.
It's hard to even, I'd say I'd go even further and say that it's hard to know. It's hard to know as an individual that you're in an era that is experiencing, or in a time where you're experiencing exponential growth in an area, right?
An outstanding point. And in 1903, it wasn't clear that you were in a period of exponential growth with the automobile. In 1912, it was.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that.
And I just want to make another point, just to sort of just a added thought that, as you're talking about the automobile and people in the early 1900s, as they were going through this era in their horses and buggies, and they see these curiosities running around with no horse pulling it. I'm sure it was like, oh my God, look at these people, with cars and so on. And they didn't think that, 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future, 40 years in the future, that was going to be growing at the rate that it eventually did, right? Just like today, I was talking to someone the other day about AI, and I was reflecting back on the growth of AI over the last 5 years. We've had AI for a while, and just in some form or another, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago was the autocorrect in our Word application or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they got increasingly sophisticated until at such point where these chat bots came out, and that was when people started to really take notice of AI. It became a thing, right? But we're living through that age right now, and I'd say a very small fraction of people worldwide are really exposed to it in any meaningful way. The majority of people are not. If you think about the developing world, a lot of the rural parts of India, Africa, and so on, they're not exposed to AI. They're still living as they probably did 30 years ago. We did 30, 40, 50 years ago.
I'm not sure about that. What percentage of the world has access to a cell phone? Yeah. I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but I know that in rural Africa, young, keen kids are getting cell phones, and in rural villages where they do not have electricity, and they're powering them by solar panels.
You're right. That is true. And in fact, my younger son, got my wife a birthday card. It was really funny. It was a video that was recorded in Africa by some young men in Africa that were dancing and sort of wishing her a happy birthday. It was sort of cute and a little sexy, and you're right. So yes, you were right. So I concede that point, that yes, cell phones and the internet and maybe AI in some way, in some fashion, is being exposed to more and more people around the world.
I believe the uptake for ChatGPT was the fastest ever. I think over 1 billion people use it, but don't quote me on that. It's a lot. And here's the crazy thing. Has this happened with Henry Ford, and it's also happening with AI. It's Wright's law. For mass-produced products, has the quantity doubles, that the total amount produced doubles, the cost per unit drops by a certain percentage. And that's what's happening with AI. That's what's happened with personal computers. That's what happened with cell phones. That's what's happening with solar panels, and that's what happened with Henry Ford. So once you get on one of those waves, the more you make, the cheaper it is. And as long as they're good enough for the first guy, well, then get out of the way, because there's a tidal wave coming. I submit that AI is one of those tidal waves, one of those once every 100-year inventions that is really, really disruptive. And I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, or I think it's clear to me, that over the next few years, you are increasingly, if you're not using AI, you're going to be left behind. And AI is a tool to help you. I want to qualify that by saying, and I don't know where it's going to go in 5 years, and I'm a little nervous about that. But for the next few years, there's a tremendous opportunity for everybody to be more productive. You have to understand how to use the tool. It can do some things amazingly well and some things that's surprisingly dumb. But I guess I'd sum it up by AI with the AlphaFold LLM has already won the Nobel Prize. It solved a 50-year-old problem that was really, really hard, and they folded proteins with it, and they've discovered something like 200,000 previously unknown proteins with AlphaFold, and they've published them as open source for anybody anywhere in the world to use. So people all over the world are using these things. Open source, the internet, all exponential growth things, and we're going to have an incredible number of drugs come on the market in the next, I don't know how long it takes for this to happen, like 5, 10, 20 years.
It seems to be the glass full view to me, though. It's like, I mean, I get it, and I'm always impressed and amazed at how much you know about this stuff, like these facts that you sort of just rattle off the top of your head. But it seems to be the glass half full view. Then to me, it's more, is it going to increase the divide between the haves and the have-nots?
A great question, and let me answer this way, and this is a bit of maybe I'm jumping ahead. As part of this, we're going to have free per kilowatt energy, specifically electricity, free like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You'll pay a flat rate per month, and you can use.
How did you go to that from what we were talking about?
You asked if it was going to be positive. I'm saying that's a very positive thing.
Oh yeah, but we were talking about sort of the idea that all these great things are going to come out of AI and it's going to sort of proliferate. How did we go from there to? And my argument was the glass half empty view was going to increase the divide between the haves and the have-nots. The investment is going to be made by these huge mega corporations that are whose GDP, whose profits are bigger than many countries combined, and that the divide between the people that have the money, the people that are getting rich off of this stuff, is going to increase. The people who don't have it, they're going to be sort of stuck with their phones and using the basic tools that they have access to. And your microphone is I don't know what you're doing with it, Mr. Glenn, but
I'm moving. I need to stop moving.
So that was my argument. So how do we go from there to energy is going to be free? It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. I don't get the connection.
There's two revolutions happening at the same time. One is AI. I submit this is one of those once every 100-year events. And the other is free per kilowatt energy, which I haven't really talked too much about. But AI, in fact, supercharges that in a virtuous circle, feedback loop. I kind of slipped that in. But here's where I see us going. You got to be very careful predicting the future, but I'll say this: it's not 1903, it's 1912. So you can kind of see where it's going for each of those technologies. And here's the critical thing. They're cheaper than the alternatives. So all you need to do is get out of the way and the market will take care of it.
Okay, so tell me more. So okay, so let me ask you this. Do you at least see that the divide between the haves and the have-nots is getting bigger, not smaller?
It absolutely is, and it's disgusting. And personally, I think that's wrong. It causes all kinds of social division. But I think regulation, reasonable regulation, and reasonable democracy. There doesn't exist regulatory capture is the polite way. The less polite way is legal bribery, or influence in some untoward way. If that happens, it's very clear. I want to be modest in my language. It seems clear that at some point in the fairly near future, AI will be able to do most things. Plus, we're having a huge population drop off around 2050, and we'll only do what we want. Otherwise, we'll just get AI or a robot to do it. And obviously, we don't want to starve to death. So we'll have to put a tax on the machines, which will basically pay for us. So everybody's going to be kind of like Kuwait, where you get a big fat check every month and you do whatever you want. I know that can not go down a very good path. Are people still inspired or motivated, engaged, and all that stuff? It's a valid question, but I see that kind of world coming in the next few decades, as long as we don't get blown up by global warming. Let me give the counter.
I don't know. I mean, that's a very I don't know if that's optimistic or pessimistic. It just seems like that's one possible future.
I want to give an important caveat. Both of these revolutions, these once every 100-year revolutions, we're in a bad place in terms of climate, and if we don't fix it soon, we are screwed.
So I'll just say this. I mean, that these big mega corporations are spending billions of dollars to build out infrastructure to power AI, and which is going to consume a lot of the electricity, the capacity from the grid, which will require new ways to generate energy. So all these energy needs, isn't it going to accelerate global warming? And I know they're talking about creating sort of, using nuclear power. That's been in the news, and I know that there's a lot of debate, especially in this country, in the U.S. with the present administration, about renewables not being really viable. Contracts are being canceled for wind energy, for solar, for all kinds of things, and going back to drill, baby, drill. Let's just get more gas and oil out of this little incursion into Venezuela.
Well, keeping with the story, that's the 1903 view.
Right, exactly. So that's what came to my mind, is the analogy of we're still in this old way of thinking, and we seem to have gone backwards in our thinking.
And here's where I take a slightly different view. In terms of where the technology is, it's 1912. And enough people are into the technology and working with the 1912 mindset that it's clear that it's going to happen. And it's already happened. It's at scale, it's widely loved, and it's growing exponentially. Yes, some people, there's a famous quote: it's very hard to convince somebody of something whose job depends on not understanding. So, for example, I would not go and ask an oil executive what they think of renewables. They now know, and climate change, they now know they can't say, the evidence is so overwhelming, they can't say it doesn't exist, they can't say it doesn't work, but they'll find some way to disparage it. Mm-hmm. Here's the bottom line. Lazard, I'm a climate activist, so I'm up on this stuff. Lazard is an investment bank that tracks the average price of electricity generation worldwide by technology. And in their latest report that came out in June of 2025, nuclear, and they use something called the levelized cost of electricity, so you can compare across technology. Basically, it's all the costs over the life of the technology divided by all of the output that it produces. So it's a way to compare things. It's kind of unfair because it doesn't include nuclear waste disposal, and it doesn't include emissions and health-related risks, but it's a rough comparator. So even leaving aside all of that stuff, nuclear, and for some reason they just use the US figure for this, I'm not sure why, but nuclear came in at, if my memory is correct here, $180 per megawatt hour. Gas came in at $78 per megawatt hour. And solar came in at $58 per megawatt hour. Wind is about $60, so it's a bit more. And remember, wind and solar are following Wright's curve. They're mass produced in factories, and the price keeps going down. It's kind of flattening out a little bit for wind, and wind is a big machine, so it's not quite as amenable to mass production. Solar absolutely is. And if you look at the graph, it's a perfect exponential graph. I can send one to you offline to include in the notes for this. It's a beautiful exponential curve.
You can show it here if you have it handy. Unless it's going to get that mic.
It's on my phone. I'll make a point of sending it to you as a slide. Here's the thing that's so hard for people to get their heads around. I saw this coming in 10 years ago. Solar was more expensive 10 years ago, but I was seeing how the price was dropping. So I've been waiting for this. Here's the thing. Even though I'm into this, I've been looking for it. It actually crossed the line in terms of being the cheapest in 2020, and I didn't notice it. Now, there's an article in the New York Times on August the 28th by David Wallace Wells that talks to a Bloomberg energy analyst. Her name is Jenny Chase, and she makes a very strong statement. And by simply extrapolating out this exponential curve, she says, and this is almost a verbatim quote to the best of my memory, by just 2030, we will have absolutely and reliably free electricity thanks to solar power pretty much everywhere on sunny days.
And what about cloudy days?
Batteries.
So okay, I get that, and I know that it's there's a lot of solar generation, especially in the state of Texas. I know that from our earlier conversations.
Yep.
And I think there's some other states that are, and I think that the way Texas is doing it is sort of opening it up so that the cheapest electricity or the cheapest way to generate electricity are getting the contracts to build whatever, right?
Yep.
That's not happening in other states. At least it's not to the level that Texas is doing it. And with our current administration sort of moving back to,
removing subsidies.
Fuels.
Yeah, removing subsidies, which juggles the market. But here's the critical thing. Even with removal of subsidies, solar is still the cheapest.
Yeah.
And it's still going to win every time in Texas. Solar and batteries.
State out of 50.
Yeah. Okay, just a second.
51 if you count Canada.
Actually, up here, we actually count you guys as our 11th province. We actually don't. That's a joke I just made up.
Yeah, it's okay.
And let me be clear, our leaders do not say that because that would be considered very rude. And in fact, I probably shouldn't have said it because that's also kind of rude. But
yeah, we're just having a fireside chat. You never know what you're going to get.
9/11, back at you. At the Canada-U.S. hockey tournament that everybody made a big deal about a year or so ago, somebody actually had a sign at the hockey game, and it made the Canadian news. Welcome to the 11th province. So that's where I got it. I thought it was quite funny.
That's great. I love it.
Yep. Just remind me to put that in the chat as well. And to be fair, you show the picture that recently went on social media of the U.S. flag over Canada too. So it's for both sides. Now I've lost my train of thought. Where was I?
We're talking about subsidies and Texas, and you say even with the loss of subsidies, solar is going to win every time.
Solar and
in
batteries.
Texas. And I said, what about the other 49 states?
And I'm
if you want to count Canada, 50 states.
Or 11, depending on how you're counting.
Right.
Couple of things. First of all, Texas is by far the biggest consumer of energy in the U.S. They're the first. California is second. Florida is third. But Texas, I believe, is bigger than California and Florida combined. But don't quote me on that. But it's roughly like that. Texas uses a whack ton of energy. Here you mentioned a very important point. Texas has competitive procurement, technology neutral.
Competitive procurement. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we need a gigawatt of power. Okay, everybody, bring your best game. What do you got? And solar, for the last 4 or 5 years, has been winning every time. One of the problems with solar, and this is happening in Texas, is solar only works in the daytime when the sun's out. On a normal grid without solar, your peak demand is on sunny afternoons when everybody has their air conditioners on and it's a work day and all the factories are running. When you have solar, it generates so much electricity on a grid once you get to a certain percentage, and Texas is long past that the peak generation is on sunny afternoons in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And as you add more and more solar, you get more and more generation, so much that it overwhelms the demand. And here's the amazing thing. The price on the wholesale market goes negative.
So you're getting paid to use energy.
On the wholesale market.
Yeah.
Here's the next cool thing. Batteries have been dropping in price faster than solar panels. So some clever fellow called up one of the battery folks and says, hey, can you make a really big battery? Sure. Would it work if I paid you to charge it? And they go, what? Yeah, I'll pay you to charge it, and then you can sell it back to me in 5 hours when the sun goes down. They go, let me back the truck up. So needless to say,
This is happening in Texas?
This is happening in Texas. And
so let me ask you this. Why aren't we hearing about this stuff except on this show?
Because change is hard. Because the fossil fuel burning industry is powerful and has a lot of money.
So here's what I find really amazing, that Texas, of all states, Texas is leading the charge on this competitive procurement.
Before I answer that, let me just throw in one other wrinkle. Here's the cool thing about solar and batteries. They're mass produced in factories. You put a shipping container full of solar panels. The batteries themselves are in a shipping container. They ship in the shipping container. So they're made in the factory in a shipping container, and they can be, assuming permits and a grid connection, and those are big assumptions, they can be deployed in weeks or months. Potentially weeks, be generating some power. Of course, you have to test it and all this sort of stuff, but they're tested in the factory. They're guaranteed for 25 years. So they can be deployed extremely quickly. And here's the clincher. Everybody wants AI. Everybody's trying to build AI, get permits here, get permits there. I'll come back to the water in a second. They can't get enough electricity. The only technology that can be deployed faster, assuming permits and a grid connection, than AI is solar and batteries.
So why is Meta and other companies investing in these companies that have still yet to prove themselves building these small nuclear plants, small, quote unquote?
Why is Meta doing that?
I believe so. I read an article about Meta investing in some, I forget the name of the company, but investing in some company that builds these, what do they call these, the small ones?
Small modular reactors.
Small modular reactors, SMRs, right.
Yep.
Which haven't been proven yet. I mean, there's prototypes out there, but even those will take, time to build and test and get.
Let me speak directly to small modular reactors. There's a lot of marketing going on in the nuclear industry. Certainly, from a theoretical perspective, small modular reactors are a theoretical possibility. By the way, we already have them in submarines and aircraft carriers, except those ones we can't use for commercial because they use highly enriched uranium. So we do have to make a new design. And in the G7, nobody's done it yet. Except it gets worse than that. The cost the cost per kilowatt for a small modular reactor is larger than the large ones. So there's a cost penalty there. And the first one that got licensed was NuScale in Utah, and it did the same thing that every nuclear project has done, and it was way over budget and way late, and they canceled it. They spent over $1 billion, and it was canceled. So real soon now, yeah, we'll have one. By the way, it takes 10 years to go and deploy one. You're not going to be putting
for a small nuclear reactor.
You're not
10 years.
You're not going to be putting one of these on a truck. Yeah, I'd like to tomorrow. Okay, thanks. See you later. It's not going to be like that. These things are the size of a small building. And they've never been done yet.
Yeah.
Nuclear made sense maybe 30, 40.
I get all that. Still, you don't hear about solar plus batteries as being, this is the next big thing. And Meta and Google and I don't know, whoever else is, NVIDIA, whoever, I don't know, is investing. Tesla isn't, maybe Tesla is, I don't know. Tesla is, they make their own batteries, or at least they sell them, and solar. So are they sort of using that as an approach to power their AI ambitions?
They're being neutral. Technology companies like Meta and Tesla are being neutral. Hey, I need power. What do you got? And a nuke guy says, oh yeah, I can do it. I promise. This time it's different. All right, here's 20 million, but you got to deliver. It's the got to deliver part that ain't going to work. We know this. Have I ever talked to you about the Virgil S. Summer nuclear plant in North Carolina?
No.
This is kind of the poster child. It's referred to as Nuke Gate. A couple of companies said, yep, we'll do it. Yeah, this time it's going to be different. We won't be over budget. But by the way, could you please allow us to bill the ratepayers before the plant is done? Because we'd really like to get back our capital costs. It's really painful to go and pay for all this ahead of time. It'll take careful in the date. They typically take around 10 years. I do remember the amount, and it was $9 billion. We'll build this for $9 billion, which is not chump change. But they had this little, and by the way, we'll get paid along the way. The ratepayers did not like that. After something like 8 or 9 rate increases, after ratepayers had paid $9 billion, which was the original estimate, it hit the fan. This was a huge scandal. 4 executives went to jail over it because they lied to the federal government to get a loan. And the estimated cost to complete, after having spent $9 billion, and it was around 10 years, was $37 billion.
Jeez.
So the project was canceled, and it has never produced a single watt of power, and North Carolina is still paying off the $9 billion.
All right. So nuclear may not be an option, even though that's what you read about these SMRs that may or may not be an option. Maybe technology there will improve over time. It'll be safe, and it'll be another option that's viable. But you did say that nuclear is $180 a megawatt.
Yes.
And solar and battery is around 60 or 58, if I remember correctly.
Solar is 58. Gas is 78, and I want to double check this one, but I believe solar plus batteries is 90. But solar 90 when you combine the two together. That's the latest trick. Solar and batteries together. So
why would it be more? I'm not. Is it just the sunk cost of installation?
If solar alone does not include a battery, solar plus battery includes more stuff, and you have to pay for that stuff.
So it's just that cost spread out over time, because I'm assuming that once it's installed, it's good for at least whatever the life of the battery is. And
the latest systems are available with 25-year complete system costs. You have to pay a bit more for that. That includes the wiring, everything, maintenance, any battery cells that blow up, any solar panels that break. You can even get insurance against hailstones. So this is a robust guarantee, and there's no moving parts, so there's negligible.
Okay.
I want to circle back to the point you talked about a moment ago. Just getting solar and not worrying about overnight is $58 per megawatt hour.
Right.
But
I think that's where the argument from the current administration is, right? The sun doesn't shine at night. The wind doesn't blow all the time. Where are you going to get the energy? I'm not doing a very good job of this, but
here's my answer to that. If you want to check if the sun's shining, go outside. If you see green stuff, you know the sun's shining. I can assure you, with the possible exception of Antarctica and the North Pole, anywhere on Earth you look, you will see green stuff somewhere.
Yeah. I get it, but I mean, those are the refrains, right, that you hear from. And
let me speak very clearly to that. It's an important question. Until you get to that percentage until you're starting to get a lot of negative prices on the wholesale market, you don't need freaking batteries.
I see what you're saying.
Only when you get negative prices on the wholesale market.
You do need something for when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, that you've got all this excess energy that, what do they do with it? It's basically, they're giving it to you free, or they're paying you to use it. But then at night, when the sun isn't shining, or, it's a relatively calm day, the wind isn't blowing, then you need backup sources.
I'll go through this step by step. You don't install 100% solar overnight. You say, I need a bit more, so you want to expand the grid by, say, 1 gigawatt, which is a lot. That's about the size of a nuclear power plant, and a decent-sized solar farm or decent-sized wind farm. And I want to circle back to water and agrivoltaics at some point. Water for AI and agrivoltaics for solar. But the way you deploy these technologies is incrementally. So you put out a bid, I want maybe even only 500 megawatts. And you'll see what you get. And then, okay, you guys won the bid. Okay, put it up. Got your permits and everything. Yep, okay, put it up. Done. And then they bring in another AI density. So you add another 500 megawatts. You already have an existing system there, which already works. You're adding incremental power. And when you start adding solar, it's at the peak on sunny afternoons. You want more power on sunny afternoons. I'm in Toronto. 15 years ago, they used to announce on the radio, please shut off your air conditioners. Power demand is at a peak. We're going to run out of power, and if you shut everything down, it'll be okay. I don't hear that anymore. Texas in 2023 had 11 energy-related shortfalls where they had to shut down stuff, ignoring weather-related. Too much demand. In 2024, when solar really got going, and it's growing exponentially, they had zero. The solar.
So you're saying it's sort of a phased approach, and when you need the battery, you add the battery, and so on, and you slowly replace existing sources of energy production, replace them with solar until such a time when you need the batteries to replace even more of that existing power generation technology or sources of energy.
It was always this way. It's particularly in Texas. Yes, in some jurisdictions say, I don't know how they get away with this, but we need so much power, only nuclear can apply. Like, that makes me crazy, particularly when nuclear is the most expensive. But in a competitive procurement situation, you just say, give me some power. I don't care, as long as it's reliable and insured and stuff like that, and it actually works. I don't care. And in fact, having different technologies is actually good, because they all have the different pros and cons. Gas needs maintenance, nuclear needs refurbishment. It's extremely dangerous, so there's extreme safety protocols around it. You have to change the rods every so often. The pipes are the cooling tubes are triple welded and X-rayed. You really don't want a leak of radioactive coolant, for example. So they're all different, and actually having a diversity is good. But what we're at today is we need more. AI's coming. We need more. What's the current best technology? Right now, it's solar. What it'll be in 10 years? Probably solar, but I don't care. I'm just saying, give me your best.
Yeah. But that's, again, I'm going to go back to, that's not what you're reading in the media, these big mega corporations, and you don't see them saying, okay, we're going to install solar and batteries to power our AI center.
Okay, let me speak to that. In 1903, the horse industry had a lot of money. The car industry, not so much. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
So they were the prevailing technology. That's what everybody talked about. And I can speak to actually 1903. The first cars in 1903, they kind of sucked. They had wooden spokes. They had mechanical brakes, crank start. Women hated that. And they weren't very reliable. They wouldn't go that far, and they were noisy and slow.
Which is why people said it's a fad, right? It's never going to last. Horses aren't going away.
And in 1903, that's the point. That wasn't a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
The cars were kind of crappy. It's kind of cute and neat that you can do it. They used to have a race, a horse and a car. Don't ask me which year it was. And they made a big deal out of it because cars were starting to, this is like 1907 or something like that, where cars were sort of getting okay. And so they had a race, and it was a big spectacle. And both of them started from a standing start. Of course, the car guy had to get out and crank his car to start it up. And the, well, of course, took off. He finally got it going. But in the first year they ran it, the horse won because it took him too long to start, and the car was kind of slow. They ran it every year, and then after about 3 years, the car won, and then they stopped doing it because the cars were getting faster every year.
Yeah.
So in 1903,
actually, that's a really good sort of analogy, corollary, or whatever, however you want to say it. I love it, actually, the car as a metaphor for what we're witnessing, or maybe not witnessing, not even aware of today. Energy. What's that?
I got to get back to it's here. I have some numbers for you.
What's here?
It's a quick answer. It's not 1903.
Right, which is what you've been saying. It's 1912, or maybe even beyond that.
Yeah, it's already.
And my point is that I mean, I don't claim to be representative of the average person. I'm pretty average. You are much more educated in this area. You are much more of an activist, a climate proponent, and all that stuff. And so you are much more aware of where things are. I would say most people who aren't thinking about these things would have a similar level of awareness of where solar is, where energy is coming from. They may not even care, right? I'm maybe a little bit more aware of stuff because I'm curious about these things, but most people don't care, right? So what's in it for them?
An excellent question. In terms of where people's heads are at, it's 1903. But the technology is at 1912. People just didn't notice. And this actually applies to the activist community. I'm having a lot of trouble with my fellow activists trying to get their heads around this.
They're way ahead. They're like in 1930.
No. They're in 1903.
Activists?
From a climate perspective, they're saying, okay, we need regulations, we need a carbon price, we need industrial carbon price, we need border controls, blah, blah, blah. And I've been saying since 2024 when I read that article, guys, it's changed now. All we need is to get out of the way, and the market will take care of it for us. I'll send you the link to that article afterwards.
Okay.
People can't get their heads around it. There's a book, quite a famous climate activist goes by the name of Bill McKibben. He just brought out a book called Here Comes the Sun. And I was, and he had a book tour in Toronto. He went around North America. And I had the pleasure of seeing him and actually chatting with him for a few minutes. And I talked to him about this. And yeah, people just don't get it. I brought a bunch of climate people with me to the book launch. The people who were there with me didn't get it. Like, this is so hard to wrap your head around. As a climate activist, we need to pivot from regulation and controls and limits and monitoring to just get out of the way. Competitive procurement and just watch what happens. In Germany, they have balcony solar. Utah has got this now. You go to Home Depot and you buy a solar appliance. It's like a toaster in terms of electrical characteristics. You plug it in with one caveat. You have to have you hang the solar panel on your balcony so it can get some sun, and it spins your meter backwards. How cool is that? And for another few $100s, you can get a battery. Now, they're limited by how many you can put on a given circuit. The limit there is 800 watts, which is not a ton, but you can buy multiple ones of them.
Yeah.
The Germans are making fences out of these things.
Mm-hmm. I think I've seen some articles and some ads even for this technology, the fences, the solar fence. Yeah.
You could make a fence out of wood, except you have to replace it every 25 years. You make it out of solar panels, they're guaranteed for 25 years.
And they're generating power.
And you're making money.
Yeah.
We have so much. I got to come back to there's a bunch of threads I want to come back to. I scribbled some of them.
Yeah, we also have to pay attention to time. So we're about 50 minutes into this. And yes, this is a long episode, folks. We're just, rambling on about climate change and disruption. But I think this is a really important topic. So maybe we'll go a few more minutes. We can always catch up again next time we do this recording and pick up where we left off. But please finish your thoughts. I mean, what I'd like to do is sort of leave this conversation with, we sort of compared where we are today with the automobile back in 1903, 1912, and so on, right? And sort of the progression, and of course the people, the attitudes of people back then, either aware or some level of awareness of this technology, didn't really catch up to them until it happened, right?
And that's most people. Let's face it. They plot this. It's a bell curve. You have the early adopters. You have the pioneers, the late adopters, the middle, the laggards, and then the "I'll never do it. I don't care."
Yeah,
folks. So I can start tying some things together, but question me if I'm going too fast or you want some clarification. So in terms of the activists, in the climate activism community, we need to stop talking about regulation and lobbying people. We need to ask for competitive procurement, and we'll get lower electricity prices. What's not to love? I don't have to be a climate activist anymore. It
is happening in other states, but not to the extent that is happening in Texas.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
You can go that Texas. I'll cover that off too.
And maybe you can cover also how do people get involved in lobbying for competitive procurement for energy? Maybe I'm jumping ahead. I don't know.
Call your elected representative to get it faster. I see this.
I mean, the power company. What's in it for them? Because do they make more or less? I mean, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm just asking because I'm thinking that it has to sort of align up, right? So people along the value chain of energy production and consumption has to line up for everyone.
Okay, that's a big question. It's kind of the same problem that the activists have. They're used to doing things the 1903 way. They need to start doing things the 1912 way. And the 1903 way is regulation. 1912 way is let's just get out of the way. And you change the message. Instead of saying, please be good to the planet, you go, please help people save money. It's not fair what you're doing. You're inflating prices needlessly.
That's been going on for a long time. People complain to their electric company all the time that I am paying too much. How do I lower my bill?
And you lower your bill by competitive.
And what do they say? I'll put more insulation. Let's do an energy audit and we'll charge you for that. And, sign up for this plan where you meter your usage at certain times of the day. It saves a few dollars. Big deal.
You need to have competitive procurement so that you get.
Yes, right. So it's not calling your powered company. It's calling your representative, your congressperson, whatever. Right.
So that's what I was trying to say. The problem is not with the technology. The problem is with the regulations, and right now they're protecting the incumbent, the horses. The horses are basically subsidized. There's been some changes at the federal level in the United States, and subsidies on solar were removed. However, even still, it's too late. So the activists need to change their message and say, we want people to save money. And by the way, we'll get clean energy for free. But that's a more powerful message that everybody wants. What politician doesn't want to be responsible for lowering prices?
Sure.
Balcony solar is a perfect one. Germany has proven that there's no reason this won't work. They have over 1 nuclear power plant's worth of balcony solar. Why can't we have it? Because it's against the rules. Then change the
It's
freaking
kind of
rules.
ugly too. I mean, you got these solar panels on your bumper. Who wants that?
Would you like free energy? All you need to pay is the install cost. I'm just saying. You buy it once and it gives you energy for 25 years. You could put flowers around it to make it look pretty. I don't know.
Speaking of flowers, I read this article that in the Netherlands, I think it's the Netherlands, where they have the windmills that are in the sea. There's an unintended side benefit of these windmills that are off the coast. Or was it Norway? I can't remember what country, but anyway. And the side benefit is that what was once barren seafloor, no life, is now teeming with life because it sort of created this artificial reef.
Cool.
And so all these organisms of, corals and all the cold water corals and all these different species have colonized these windmills, which has given rise to new ecosystems for fish and the things that feed on fish and, and of course us, right? There's more biodiversity now in that part of the world than there was before.
That's amazing. I hadn't heard of that. And we have a biodiversity crisis because we're losing species. So that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's going to be different. I'm not the biggest fan of wind because it's a big machine and it has moving parts, but I'm technology neutral. If you don't mind a big machine, and wind in shallow ocean waters is a fabulous idea. Nobody cares as long as it's, a mile or two offshore, and the wind is better a mile or two offshore. So you got to calculate the wind, but
it does have an impact on the ecosystem, right? So you put a big, huge windmill or several of them in the ocean, and that probably has a beneficial impact on the life in the ocean.
Yep.
But also probably, I think that I've read also that it changes the climate, the microclimate around that area.
I hadn't heard about that. Right? That's fabulous. They complain.
I mean, I'm not always for the good because it sort of impacts some species in a positive way, but impacts other species in a negative way. Like if people are used to, if the species are used to a certain climate or wind pattern, whatever, it may affect their migratory, like birds, migratory patterns, nesting patterns, things like that. So there are some pros and cons to it.
What's the other than the birds? What's the con of the offshore wind?
I haven't read anything on that. I'm not the expert there. I'm just, I haven't read. I don't know if there's a con. If you listen to our leader in the U.S., they cause whales to breach and all kinds of other crazy stuff, but I don't think that's been proved scientifically.
We need scientifically based conclusions.
Hey, he said it. It must be true.
With rigorous evidence from multiple.
We don't need that. Scientists don't know anything. I mean, come on.
I'm not going to take the bait, Kumar.
All right, we got to bottom line this. So where are we? Are we closer to 1912 or are we closer to 1903 when it comes to energy?
We're absolutely at 1912. Let me try and knock off a few points quickly. Wind turbines do have a problem with birds, and you need to be careful where you put them. If you locate them carefully, birds follow migratory patterns. Don't put the wind turbines in the path of the migratory birds. So be careful where you put them. And way more migratory birds are killed on toxic waste.
That's true.
Particularly in Canada, where we have tar sands. Power companies invested in the status quo. They want to keep that. You need to make sure that the regulations that they operate under incentivize them to get the cheapest power. Duke Energy, somehow it's working for them. They just lowered their power prices thanks to solar and batteries. Solar and batteries, this is very important. They have an upfront cost, like everything, but they have essentially zero operating cost. So you get a loan, you pay it off over X years, and then you have it for free. It's pretty hard to beat that. And the price of solar is dropping 20% Solar deployment doubles every 2.5 years, and every 2.5 years, it drops 20% in price, which works out to around 8% a year. So every year, it's going to be cheaper. That's hard to compete with. Nuclear hasn't got a prayer. What about Texas? Here's what I see happening, and I think this is unstoppable as well. Texas has competitive procurement. Everybody's going over there. AI is going over there because they have cheap electricity prices. They're going to keep putting in more solar and batteries because that's the only thing that'll work. Their prices are going to keep going down as they push out their high cost supply. States that are around them, they could do competitive procurement or not. It's up to them. Texas is very entrepreneurial. If a state beside them refuses to do competitive procurement, I'm sure some very clever Texas fellow will say, okay, I'll put a solar farm on this side of the border and I'll send it to you and it'll be cheaper than what you're buying now. Sure, I'll go for that. So they'll start exporting power. The local states, they're not stupid. They'll catch on real quick. We put that solar plant on your side of the border and you're getting a tax revenue from that. Why don't we put it on our side of the border? Because you have rules against it. Duh. It's like you can't stop this.
Let me ask you this. How did Texas pass this competitive procurement?
It started in 97 when they deregulated the electricity market. They didn't like this regulated market, and they basically introduced a technology neutral. For the first 10 or so years, gas, I think coal was still going strong. Then gas came into its own, and it was the lowest ROI. Then wind came in, except now solar has come in. Solar is a bit cheaper than wind, and batteries help everything out. But yeah, they're not building that much wind now because solar is cheapest and it's dropping more predictably because it's just made in giant factories and you don't need huge cranes and stuff like that. Yeah. So they didn't know about this. They just said, may the best win. Mm-hmm. The latest trick is permitting reform and so that it's easy to put up electricity. We've been talking about AI. AI is a big user of electricity. It is madness that the AIs are not allowed to go and do what they call a purchase power agreement and directly contract with somebody with a solar farm somewhere to get their power, do it directly, and then pay the transmission company for the lines in between. Instead, they have to go through the regulator, and it's slow. Yeah. It's madness that they don't do that. It's also madness that they don't cover their roof with solar panels and put batteries around the parking lot. Again, we need to encourage all sources of generation in every way, on site, over a community parking lot, on a building. Here's the cool one, on a sheep farm, where if you raise them up a bit, you create shade for the sheep, more shade for the plants, you get more plant life, you get more per pound for the sheep, and you rejuvenate the soil. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you get all this money as well.
Yeah. I've seen those reports, those articles on the just like windmills in the sea, you know, sort of helping ecosystems. The wind farms or solar farms help the biodiversity and the plant life and the animal life and so on.
Pollinators and everything. I want to go straight to the heart of your question. How did this even happen in Texas?
Before you do that, I want to actually try to wrap this up.
Okay.
What can people do to convince their state, local lawmakers to push for this competitive procurement for energy?
Point out that the technology is changing rapidly, and we don't want to discriminate one way or the other, but we need to have competitive procurement, technology neutral, so the best technology wins. Today it's solar and batteries. I don't know what it'll be tomorrow, but let's remove the effective regulatory barriers and we'll save money. And if the power companies go, oh, I want to get a few more years out of my gas plant, allow people to put it on their own house or somewhere else. Anybody can put in energy anywhere, so we can get rid of the high cost suppliers immediately. The oil industry is a much smaller segment of the market than it used to be. I'm sorry, but it's horse time for them. Treat them with compassion, but they got to.
I don't know, Venezuela. You know, they got the largest oil reserves in the world or something.
Let me translate that into our metaphor. they got the most horses of anybody in the world. That's nice. Horses are nice animals. I actually used to work on a horse farm. I like horses. Am I going to take them on the expressway? No.
Yeah, I love it. All right, listen, this has been.
Can I tie up a few more loose ends, or?
Okay, you have maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I don't think they're loose ends. I mean, for me, it's tied up. It's like we are living in an age of disruption, energy disruption, and we are on the cusp of something big where energy can be essentially free, is what you're saying, if we are smart about it and if we're more aware about it. If we call our local state congressperson, law person, whatever, to advocate for things that Texas is doing in the US, which is competitive procurement, technology neutral competitive procurement. And what will happen is that these power companies are going to be going for the cheapest way to generate power, which currently is solar, by far is solar.
And Duke Energy just did it in Florida. Other
And
companies
Duke did it in Florida, Virginia.
Other companies are raising the rates because we have to upgrade the grid, blah, blah, blah. Stick a battery somewhere, stick solar somewhere. Don't give me this.
Yes. Yes, and so this is possible. It's possible in our lifetime. The trends are pointing in that direction. We just are not seeing it, and we're being consumed by all the other things that we see on the news every day. So let's not lose sight of what we can do to help our planet that we all live on be more sustainable. And hey, who doesn't want free energy? Right?
Free per kilowatt, like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You'll still have to pay per month.
That's fine. We pay for something. It's a lot cheaper than what we're doing now, right?
You got it.
And if energy is cheap, electricity is cheap, it might encourage more people to switch from their ICE vehicles to EVs, right? And all that stuff.
And by the way, once you have free electricity, you have free fuel for EVs. What do you think of that? Oh, and free fuel for heat pumps. Boom!
Exactly.
There goes 90% of the
which I was sort of alluding to, that free energy, right? So that means the gas-powered vehicle is another horse.
I want to strengthen something you just said, or how do you want to handle this? I have a bit. We need to wrap this up. Yeah. Okay. So
we'll have an next fireside chat. We can either continue this or go on another tangent with something else that's disruptive in our time.
Okay.
And this has been fun. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
All right. Till next time. Bye all.